Hey, welcome to another episode of the Practical Wealth Show. So this is a solo episode today. We're doing a few so I can remind y'all what I do. I've had all these fascinating guests over, but I need to remind you our firm and this show is being sponsored by Practical Wealth Solutions, and here's what we do. We help you keep more of what you make and earn more on what you keep. And one of the things that we do is we help people create privatized family banking systems so that you can get interest moving towards you rather than away from you. So the title of the show is Why Smart People Still Struggle with Money. Have you ever think about this? Have you ever looked at your paycheck, your tax return, your bank account, and thought, hey, I'm making good money. Why doesn't it feel like I'm getting ahead? And part of that is because you got to understand income is not wealth. You're not alone, though. So we've met, in the course of our career, I've met doctors, I've met business owners, I've met corporate professionals making six figures and even multiple six figures who are living paycheck to paycheck. According to the Federal Reserve, 67% of most Americans are living paycheck to pay. Americans making $100,000 a year are living paycheck to paycheck. Okay. And, they're frustrated. All their hard work isn't turning into wealth. And that's not an accident. I hate to tell you. And so today I'm going to show you why smart people struggle financially, and more importantly, how to fix it without working harder, gambling in the market, and living on beans and rice. I always tell people I'm not in the lifestyle reduction business. So here's the problem, right? One of the problems, okay? The truth is not how much you earn. It's how much you keep, and it's how much you control. See, the problem is we give control of our money away to other institutions that really create the situations, control the outcomes so that they profit of, like they teach you enough to play the money game, but we don't know enough to win. And that's the thing. And they're playing by a totally different set of rules. So most people are trapped in what I call the financial treadmill. They work hard, they get paid. So think about this. Think about your paycheck. You work, and before you get paid, you pay taxes, right? And then after you pay taxes, who gets your money? All your voluntary benefits, retirement plans, AFLAC, health insurance, and then it hits your checking account. You pay bills. A lot of us are in debt because we are been trained in what I call the debt paradigm, right? Earn, then borrow, spend, then repay. That's the debt paradigm. So 98% people are trapped in that. And then if that's not bad enough, and then when you go into a checking account, the checking account is a spending account. It's not a place to store cash. And see, so the problem is we have leaks in our money bucket and then wealth transfer. So what is a transfer? A transfer is money most people are losing money unknowingly and unnecessarily. See, unknowingly, means that you could do something about it if you learn, and unnecessarily means it can be stopped if you want to. And so step one, most wealth is lost by how people manage cash flow. And that's the game, is won and lost right there, cash flow control. Okay. Let's talk about the transfers for a second. So there's like 15, but I'm only going to go over the top 5 today. And if you'll email me, we're going to put a link in the show notes, and I'll send you my free report on transfers. Okay. Because that's what you got to learn to stop. So everybody's chasing investments. And so most people here are the 5 wealth transfers: how you pay your mortgage, taxes, okay, overpaying, under strategizing. That's huge. We're going to really get into taxes over the next few episodes. Interest, mortgages, car loans, credit cards. Nelson Nash says 30 from Becoming Your Own Banker, which if you don't have that book, you need to get that book. Almost 35% of every dollar that leaves your, what we're going to call personal economy, leaves it in the form of debt to others. 30% or so to 35%. Sometimes 40 is leaving your household in the form of debt, but y'all are running around trying to chasing rates of return. And so then there's market risk, blindly trusting Wall Street. And so let's talk about that for a second, right? So all financial advice that you're given by what I call the financial industrial complex is governed by 4 rules. And let me tell you, their goal is not to make you rich. Their goal is assets under management. Now, I'm not throwing them under the bus. I mean, they provide a great service, but you can't use them out the box. Like you need to not, you just can't blindly throw all your money at them and hope some fund manager is really smart. That's let's say unwise. All right. And because here are the 4 rules. They want your money, don't they? Right? How often? Every pay period. So every time you get paid, your money goes into somebody's bank, somebody's 401k, somebody's whatever, right? How long do they want to keep it? As long as possible. So they can charge you fees for 40 years so that they can leverage your money for 40 years, 30 years, 10 years, however. And when do they want to give it back? Never. 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 And so, all right, but what is your goal? So you got to stop and think, what is my goal? My goal, Curtis, and I asked our clients, well, if I were to say at some point, think about this, that would you like to be in your career financially independent or financially free? Not retirement. Retirement is an age, and it's a man-made, dare I say, socialist concept from that FDR stole from Otto von Bismarck, right? And so when he picked the age 65, do you understand the life expectancy of most people in the U.S. was 62? They didn't expect you to be on this stuff for 30 years, and it was supposed to be a supplement, Social Security, I mean. So it was flawed from the door, all right? So now your goal, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, is financial freedom. Financial freedom, guys, is a capacity. What's the capacity? Capacity, I use the Jim Rohn definition, being able to live like you want to live from the income from your personally invested resources. So are you building, we like to call them in our firm, cash flow engines? Every pay, every quarter? Are you looking to buy or build things, Kiyosaki will call them assets, or are we buying doodads, things that we spend money on? That again, that's a transfer, and then we use it with debt. So then we've spent money that you've not yet earned, okay, which is like, you're in quicksand. And so there's major capital purchases, so paying cash or finance with no recapture plan. And so you finance, Nelson Nash will say, everything you buy. So because you either pay to use other people's money, or when you pay cash, you're giving up interest you could be earning. That's called opportunity cost. They don't even teach that in personal finance. And then you got lifestyle creep. So spending rises as income rises. That's called Parkinson's law. Expenses will rise to meet income. And we have no plan for velocity of money, making money multiply. It's all buy and hold. It's all based on, and typical financial advice is based on what we call the accumulation theory. Okay. So if you feel like money is slipping through your fingers, these 5 areas are the culprits, not your income. Now, you do need to make more money. I mean, you can't, I always tell people, I can't steer a parked car, right? And so what we call, so the opposite of the debt paradigm is what we call in our practice the Money4Life Blueprint, the Money for Life process. So this is how we teach be in the bank. So you want to earn money, then you want to bank it. That means save it somewhere to let you be the bank. Then you want to borrow against your bank, borrow from your bank. Then you want to get the things you want, major capital purchases, not just like go to the store, right? And then and or buy assets, more importantly, and then out of the new cash flow, you repay yourself. And now once money hits your personal economy, see, the third lesson in Rich Dad Poor Dad is mind your own business. So when money hits your asset column, which is your business, you want to never let it leave there. Okay. And we just get it, and we can't wait. We want to get out of debt. We even forego our asset column to give our money straight to the institution's asset column, because we don't look at money that way because of how we've been trained. All right. So here's the thing. If you feel like money is slipping through your fingers, that's why. Okay. And so, because it's hard to, you have to identify the problem. Okay. So you've got to slow down, and you've got to think. You've got to look at, you need a coach, right? And so most financial advice only focuses on rate of return, right? And you can't control rates of return. Rate of return is history. Most people put their money in equities. There's nothing wrong with that, but there's so many myths with that. So you think you see a rate of return, you think that's compound interest. Equities go up, they go down. They appreciate, they depreciate. Your fund or your stocks are worth whatever they're worth at 3:00 at the close of the market bell, whatever the net asset value of the amount of shares that you own. So, and you can't control nothing about that. Now, you should do that, but your whole life shouldn't be focused on that. Okay. And so what about cash flow? What I want you to do is focus on efficiency of money. Stop giving away money, minimize your taxes, control your spending, and control of your money. So, infinite banking, when we talk about that, all that is creating a pool of money, a pool of capital. Let's use money terms, right? That you, was a key word there, control, right? That can move at costs to meet some needs you have. So it's a storage play. Where do you store your cash? Ken Butler would always say. Nelson's second book is Building Your Warehouse of Wealth. Wealth has to be warehoused somewhere. And so since you don't have any control when something comes up, guess what? You've got to use third-party capital and pay interest for that. So that's slowly bleeding you dry. Well, wealthy families think differently. So if they borrow money, they have the money. So they're borrowing out of opportunity, not out of necessity. And then they borrow money to make money. They don't borrow money for stuff, and they don't spend their capital. So they focus on cash flow first. If you borrow money, you should be borrowing money to make money, right? But so if you listen to the other episodes of our show, what am I talking about? It's kind of wealth outside of Wall Street, or building your biggest asset, which one asset is you, but your number one investment is your businesses. I think a business, honestly. And, so wealthy families focus on cash flow first, right? They protect against loss. You have to play defense, and they create velocity with their money. What is velocity? Velocity is the economic principles. And so more wealth, think about this, is lost unknowingly, unnecessarily, than will ever be created by picking the next hot fund or the next hot investment. And so there is more opportunity, we like to say, to minimize your losses than it is trying to pick the winners. So we want you to become efficient. So here's the thing. I do all that kind of stuff. So over the years, I've developed from just a lot of different methodologies what we're calling practical wealth, our Money4Life, the number 4 life blueprint. And it's a step-by-step system designed to help you control cash flow so you can finally see where the leaks are. That's step one, okay? Then, because if you can't if you don't have free cash flow, it's really hard to beat a bank. Okay. So our step 2 then is once we help you free up cash flow. So our goal is to increase your net income, and you want to be the bank. We say not just a customer of the bank. So your money can work for you while staying liquid. What if you could have your money doing more than one thing? You could create velocity through simultaneous use. There's another way to create velocity. Okay. And then what if you could build lasting wealth and legacy without gambling in the market? And so our framework at Practical Wealth is we teach financial principles that help people become and remain financially free. Principles drive strategy. Principles, how you think, is your belief system. What are your money rules? Okay. Do you have any? If not, I'm going to give you 5. Right. And then strategy is what you do, and tactics are what you buy. Okay. So too many people in the financial industry lead with tactics. Too many people that y'all lead with tactics. You're hearing, oh, Curtis, I want to hear about this, name some product, or what do you think about this or that? Those are tactics, right? You don't have. So before all that, it's what do you want and why? Okay. And so you got to know where you're trying to go, so that you make sure that everything you do is taking where you want to go. So you got to start with 2 things, really. Where am I at now? What's the state of the union, so to speak? And is what I'm doing, is what I'm taught taking me where I want to go? Do I have a plan to get where I want to go? Do I know where I want to go? We take people through something called our financial GPS, where we answer the 4 most important questions somebody will ever ask you. 1, what rate of return would you need to earn? Let's say you're following the accumulation theory. So what rate of return do you need to earn? And when you get to, I'm gonna do air quotes now if you are listening, retirement, to live in the future like you live today without running out of money. That's what rate of return would you need to do that? Do you know the answer to that question? If you don't, we can answer that for you. 2, here's the second question. How much do I need to be putting away a year or a month to have enough capital to live in the future like I live today, adjusted for inflation? 3rd, how long do I have to, doing what I'm doing now, how long do I have to work to live in the future like I'm living today? And here's the question people don't really want to talk about, but here's the thing. If I don't do anything different, will I, or how much will I have? Because you will. All right. Let me just not get twisted. How will you be able, how much will you need to reduce your standard of living? You don't do anything different. See, folks, you can't just sit there with your head in the sand. And just hope. When people call me, they're like, 58. They're like, all right, I need to start thinking about preparing for retirement. Really? Okay. How much you have? 20,000. Okay. That horse has kind of left the barn. Now there's stuff that you can do, but you can't save your way there. You got to, you really have to, and you always had to do that, but you really have to learn to buy or build cash flowing assets. And that's really got to be your focus. So you've got to learn how to become an investor. What are the asset classes that you can invest in? Business, real estate, paper, and commodities. So you've been listening to the show. What do we talk about? Business, real estate, paper, and commodities. And now we're going to talk about playing. So here are the 5 principles of personal finance. So principle number 1, save. Save what? 15 to 20% or more of your gross income. So if you're making let's just use a round number. If you're making $100,000, Curtis wants you saving $15,000 to $20,000 a year. Not investing, not putting in your 401k, saving, safe, liquid, accessible, guaranteed. Okay, money that you can get to. That is the foundation. See, most of y'all don't want to save, and you're like, I'm not getting any rate of return on this. Doesn't care, because your folks are rate of return, because that's what you've been trained to do. You need access to cash. All right. 2, maximum protection. So you've got to play defense. It's like, Game of Thrones. You got to build a moat around your castle. And so most of y'all are underinsured with life insurance, no disability insurance, no umbrella coverages, no wills, no trust. So part of our blueprint, we will analyze and address all that stuff. So you have to play defense because you have to protect yourself. See, you can't have a plan because you're planning on rates of return. So you only have a plan that only works one way if the market goes up. When markets go up, down, sideways, sometimes disaster happens, floods, fire, death, disability, lawsuits, right? Can you stress test your plan to work in any and all situations? That is the ideal financial plan. Okay. And so, what's the third one? Third one is full replacement of assets at death, guaranteed. Okay. So, that little word I say on the end, so when we go back to our tactics, the products, that's why we don't use IUL, because there ain't nothing in it guaranteed. All right. Not to call anybody out, but I can't help myself. And so full replacement of assets at death, guaranteed. And so, because what you have is, if you build that plan, that gives you permission to spend your money. John Wall has a great book called Permission to Spend that you should check out. And then the fourth principle is liquidity. Liquidity. How much liquidity, Curtis? 2 to 3 months, depending on your business. If you're you're in a sales business, it could be 6 months. That's at least 3 months of cash, savings, money markets. We use a tool called Currents, in the bank, right? And then after about 2 months, then where we store and where we teach people to store the liquidity is properly structured, dividend paying whole life with a mutual company. So we're clear. That's cash. Okay. But now you can access your capital without liquidation. And that way you keep moving money. See, compound interest, people talk about magic of compound interest. Well, the compound interest works best over time, uninterrupted. So if you keep taking it out, oh, Kurt, you understand, I got this high yield savings account. It earns more than life insurance. Well, when you need the money and you pull the money out, what's it earning now? Nothing, because it's not in there. So you got to, again, because you're focused on rates of return. And, you just got to know there's more. You've got to be able to understand what we call the financial physics. You just focus on one thing. That it's like a magician. They want to distract you on the one thing, but meanwhile they're driving a car on stage, because they had you distracted looking somewhere else. That is what's happening. You're all being distracted by what I call bread and circuses, while people are stealing money right out from underneath your nose, right? So our blueprint, and here's the fifth one: velocity of money over the accumulation theory. So, is your money moving? Do you have cash flow? That's the question that you have to ask yourself. And so you have to look at, Curtis, I got $500,000. Well, how much cash flow is it generating? Because what is an asset? According to the, the Rich Dad organization, an asset is something that puts money in your pocket. And so if you've got a lot of assets and no cash flow, okay, they're assets, but they're not very good ones. Okay, because the only way to use them is you're not getting dividends, even if you're doing stocks. And so the only way to use them is to sell your shares, right? So you got to think, guys, think and grow rich. And so let's go back to the Money for Life Blueprint. What are we talking about? Our step-by-step system, his system will help you control your cash flow so you can finally see where the leaks are. Then we want you to be the bank. So banking is like step 2 in our system, because what I found is that I can't help you be the bank if we can't find the money to help you save. All right. So if you can't save money, you can't be the bank. I hate to break it to you. Okay. Now, a lot of times, sometimes some of you will have lump sums, and we'll show you how to reposition it up front, but it's not a one-off, right? You have to decide how much of your cash flow that you want to put away every year so that you can be the bank, so that you can wean yourself off of third-party financing, so that you can take control of the profitability that you're giving away to other institutions. That's why. See, if you don't know the problem, as Nelson Nash would say, the solution don't matter. Okay. And then you want to build a legacy. And this is the most important part. Those of y'all listen to this, you want to build a legacy of lasting wealth and the wisdom to go along with that wealth. And so not just gambling on the market. See, I heard John Hope Bryant say, if you're not passing down wisdom, you're passing down ignorance. I hope I got that quote right. Okay. And so when it comes to money, and so our whole process is built on these 5 principles. So principles drive strategy. So principle, save 15, 20% of your gross income or more, right? You really should be saving about 30 to 40. Okay. And then what you want to do is, so what's the strategy? Be in the bank. So where are you going to store that cash? Properly structured. Well, be in the bank. Let's I'm overlapping them. I'm doing like y'all do. So the bank is not a product. Banking is a process, right? So how we teach that process: earn it, bank it, borrow it, spend it, repay it. And then the tactic to implement the strategy is properly structured dividend paying whole life with a mutual company. So it's 3 parts, right? And so a lot of people, you'll hear, they'll think, well, I want to be the bank. I want whole life insurance. Whole life is not the bank. Okay. And a lot of times y'all hear this and you'll go out and buy it, and you're talking to somebody. So if you're talking to somebody, they literally don't hit you in the head with the book before your conversation. Hey, did you get the book? What book is that, Curtis? Becoming Your Own Banker by R. Nelson Nash. What would the Rockefellers? Now, I would the first book, if you want to go, you need to go to the source. But there are books I like. Live Your Life Insurance by Kim Butler. What Would the Rockefellers Do? The updated one where it shows you not to use universal life by Garrett Gunderson. You know, those type of things. So you want to get where people that are talking about, velocity, not just, get out, max out your 401k, get out of debt, buy term investor difference. That's typical advice. All right. And, so what I do, we build on the 5 principles that people with money do. Okay. And they quietly follow. It's just ingrained in their philosophy. And that's what we teach the clients every day. So I just wanted to, start an episode that started to resonate with you, so you can get back to understand, how we can serve you. If this episode resonated with you, if you're making money but not feeling wealthy, it's time to take the first step. So I put together a free resource called the Cash Flow Control Blueprint. And so check the show notes. A matter of fact, text Be the Bank to 55444 and we'll send it out to you. The first thing you'll get is the it's a report. You'll get the blueprint. I can't think of the report. It's in there, but we'll send it out to you. And so the cash flow control blueprint is we'll take you through and help you see where your money is going. We're going to stop the leaks, because one of the first things that we do is we'll create a cash flow map for you, right? And so if you'd like to see where your money's going, you want to spot the leaks and the hidden transfers and take back control of your cash flow immediately. A lot of times we're finding anywhere from, $400 to $3,000 a month just by looking at helping you pay attention to where your money's going and stopping the leaks and stopping things that are wasting money, where you're tying money up. You just don't look at it right. Okay. And so when I see your financials, I look at it differently. So click the link in the show notes to download it. Because if you could control your cash, you could control your life. And that's the first step to living money for life. Listen, thanks for joining me. In the next episode, I'm going to break down the 5 biggest wealth transfers nobody talks about and how to stop them from stealing your future. You won't want to miss it. You don't want to miss it. Go out there, guys, and make it a profitable day.